So back in November of 2020, I was in and out of a hospital with testicular torsion 8 times altogether. Because why permanently fix a medical issue when you can temporarily fix it, I guess. Thanks, NHS. And on my last time at one of the hospitals, I had called the taxi to go home, but it would take about 30 to 40 minutes to get to me because it was a Saturday in a city. Since there was gonna be a bit of a wait, I decided to sit in a bench or garden area just in front of the hospital. It was 3 a.m., about 0 degrees Celsius, and I had been awake for 36 hours at that point. My taxi was on its way, and I just sat cross-legged on the bench, headphones on, and nicotine keeping me alive. Everything was all fine until after 10 minutes. I noticed a guy, very clearly walking directly towards me. He was stumbling a little bit, so I just assumed that he was drunk. As he got on level with me, he stopped right in front of me and said something that I didn't hear. I looked up and said, "What? Sorry, I had music on." As I pulled them off, and he looked me dead in the eye and just said, "I could fucking batter you right now." Of everything I was expecting him to say, that wasn't on the list, so I got caught off guard. I tried just disarming him with my humor by saying, "I don't doubt it." Which did work, thank God, because he would have absolutely pummeled me into the ground. And every time I said that or something similar, he'd just say, "I could batter you. I want to deck you right here, right now. And I could take you in a fight," just to recall a few of them. After his anger had toned down, he sat on the bench next to me and started generally drunk rambling about his family and friends, and, very specifically, his best friend's girlfriend that he was having an affair with. Then he pointed out my shoes, saying, "Those are nice, mate. Can I have them?" Obviously, I said no firmly but aggressively, then said thanks and told him about the fact that I got them on sale. He said, "Can I touch them?" Which was immediately a big red flag. I politely declined, and he started rubbing my shoe anyway. I was still sitting cross-legged on the bench. Then in one swift movement, he grabbed my ankle, pulled my entire leg up to his face, and put the entire toe of my size 11 shoes in his mouth. At which point, while sitting, I stunned in silence. I started desperately looking around, and I see the hospital police walking over. The officer asked if we were here together. He said yes, and I said no. The officer then asked if he was a patient. I said yes, and he said no. I told the officer that I was just waiting for my taxi, and the guy rambled something that I couldn't really make out to the officer, who suggested that he move along. The guy stood up, gave me a handshake, and walked off into the night. The officer obviously asked if I was okay, and I told him what happened. He was just as confused as I was. After that, my taxi was due in 5 minutes, so I went and stood on the opposite side of the hospital where the taxi rank was. I asked some friends who are familiar with a lot of drugs what he could have been on, and they unanimously said meth, and the shoe thing was probably just a fetish. So, random shoe biter outside the hospital, let's not meet again.
I'm a student. I speak English and French, so I tutor people in my free time to make some money to buy textbooks and medicines. Because of the pandemic, many of my students couldn't pay anymore, so I was left with no one. Until this guy showed up. He's like 50. Loud, weird dude. He has a daughter my age, 19, and a wife. And yet every time he talks about them, he's either trash-talking his wife or saying stuff about his daughter. Like she's really sexy and talking about her boyfriends. Real scary. I have been tempted to stop teaching him, but until I find other students, I can't. The thing is, we live in the same city, and we have not met. But he's obsessed with finding out my address. He says stuff like I'm beautiful, or it's so strange that I don't have a boyfriend. He draws, but he doesn't draw suns and flowers. He only draws naked women. And he draws them while looking at me, during our classes. Luckily, these are online classes. But I swear, every time I have to teach him, 5 times a week, I want to die. He always talks about how hot he was when he was young, about how many women he used to sleep with. He says the most sexist things. He has another daughter who is 9 years old. Fucking 9 years old. And he always says he's worried about her turning out gay. Because he can deal with a whore daughter, but not a lesbian. It's just non-stop inappropriate comments about women, about me, about my sexual life. He knows I'm struggling with money, and he always takes advantage of that. Lately, he always asks for my address. I laugh and play dumb, change the topics, but he insists. He says things like, I want to know where you live so we can hang out. He's so awful. But last week it got real scary. He said he had another student for me. I said, great. Next morning, I woke up to 5 messages of him asking me personal info for this new student. And of course, asking for my address. The thing is, he found a fucking address. My last address. I moved some months ago, and the address he found and showed me was my last address. I'm not stupid. I've never put my personal info online. The guy's a programmer. He works with computers, and he's really good at it. I'm scared because the only place he could have found that address is a government's website, as it's listed as my current address. I've not changed it yet. He also found out my full name, but I've only ever given him my first name. I always use VPNs. I have a full system protecting my phone and laptop, one that my cousin installed. And I have tried searching for my address online, and it just doesn't show up. I'm freaked out. Every time I go out, I'm afraid that I will encounter him in the street. Let's just hope that we will never meet.
I'm a girl, and this happened when I was 20 in the early 2000s. People used landlines and cell phones were not unlimited. This happened in a town about an hour away from Sacramento. My friend was house sitting for a family that her family was friends with from church. She was to house sit in the country just outside of town for a week. They had animals like cats, rabbits, a donkey, and horse, and the family also had dogs too, but the family took the dogs with them. My friend was in charge of feeding the animals and watching the place. She didn't have to get the mail daily because they had this metal lockbox style mailbox down their long driveway. They didn't have any neighbors for miles, just fields of alfalfa, cattle, and corn, so I guess the lockbox was for safety. Towards the end of the week, she asked if I wanted to spend the night and keep her company, and I thought it sounded fun. I had moved out from my aunts and uncles and had gotten my own apartment, so I told her I'd pick her up on the way there after I got out of work. We got there around 9:30 p.m., grabbing dinner on the way. We went into the barn first thing and fed the animals. It was late for their dinner, and they made their hunger known with their animal noises. We made sure they have gotten water, and then went inside. The house was this big ranch-style house, single story. The living room was to the left as you walked into the home. There was a long hallway directly to the right of the entrance that led to where the bathroom and bedrooms were. Straight ahead was the dining area, and to the left of that was the kitchen area and patio door. They did not have an open floor plan. In the kitchen, on the opposite side from the dining area was a long hall that had several doors. My friend explained that the wife ran a daycare center out of the house. Those rooms were play areas for the kids she took care of. We didn't bother going over there because we had no interest. We watched some TV, ate our leftovers, and talked about people we knew. As it got later, she turned on the house alarm and said that she didn't like sleeping in other people's beds, so she had been sleeping on the couch. Then she offered it to me. She would sleep on one of the two huge recliners that reclined so far back it was almost flat. The chairs were really comfortable, so I just said I'll take the chair. I went and laid back in my chair with a blanket. We turned off the TV and were talking for maybe 20 minutes in the dark when the motion sensor floodlights started shining through the window, lighting up the room. Now, I really have no idea why people in the country think that it's okay not to have curtains or blinds, because to me, that's insane. We both got quiet, and Amanda says, maybe it's one of the cats? Then we start hearing gravel crunch, like a person walking across gravel in the parking area outside. My chair was closest to the window, and I slid carefully down to the floor, clutching the stupid blanket the whole time. The floodlight timed out and my friend slid to the floor too. We laid on our stomachs in the dark, not knowing what to do for a minute. When we heard a loud bang, and all of a sudden, the house alarm started blaring and the floodlights turned on again. It was so loud, we covered our ears and I started to panic. I swear, I have never been so close to peeing my pants in my life. I began crawling towards the keypad for the security because I've seen the commercials. There's a button you push, and a person responds to you in case of an emergency, or at least sends the police. The main screen says, Patio 1 of 2 open. Amanda starts to cry a little and hits the call assistance button on the pad, and nothing happens. There's no assistance. I ask her where the phone is, and she says there's a phone in the kitchen and one in the parents' room down the hall. So, our choices are to go to the kitchen past the windows and next to one of the patio doors, or to go down the hall to the parents' room and use the phone there. I asked her where the other patio is, and she said it was in the daycare part of the house. It was an easy decision. We go inside the parents' room and it's pitch black. I ask her where's the phone, and she says, "I think we have to turn on a light." I really don't want to turn on a light, but I have no choice. I don't have a flashlight and I didn't bring my cell because I had limited minutes. It was a simpler time, and Amanda didn't even get her own cell until after this happened. She turns on the light and we start looking around the room. Not only did these people not have curtains on any window, but they didn't even have closet doors. We see a golf club leaning against the wall by the bed. They probably have it instead of a baseball bat, which is what I had next to my bed at home. We figure if we hit someone with it, it's gonna leave a mark. She grabs it, and we continue our search for the phone. Looking at the obvious places, we find a cordless phone stand minus the actual phone. The alarm is still raging, and we have a light on, and the person who opened the patio door is bound to notice, is all I'm thinking at this point. She asks, "Should we use the locate phone buttons?" I look at her and respond, "Yeah, if you want some strange guy coming in here with it and asking us if we were looking for something." I am getting mad that I'm scared and in this situation, standing there knowing that we have to go to the kitchen. The house alarm stops. It gets country quiet. If you ever lived in the country, you know what I'm talking about. And there isn't another golf club for me to grab. So I make her go out first, flipping every light on and keeping the doors we passed in the hall closed. We double check the security panel and it still says patio open. We hit the call button and it still doesn't work. Double checking the front door is locked, we start for the kitchen. I tell her we have to check the patio near the kitchen, and I grab a big knife that wasn't even close to being sharp from the kitchen. We check the patio door near the kitchen and it's locked. We turn on all the lights and grab the phone and dial 911. The phone isn't a cordless phone. It's one of those old phones with a cord attached on a wall. My friend is on the phone with a dispatcher telling her what happened, and I hear a whistle coming from outside the kitchen window. The thing people don't think about, because I didn't in my thinking that safety was turning on the lights, is while you have the reflection of the inside of the window, people on the outside have a clear view of you, unless you press your face against the window. And I hear the whistle again. It sounds like someone trying to get someone else's attention kind of whistle. But I don't see anything outside, and I'm not pressing my face to the window to see if I'm the person they're whistling for. My friend is still talking to the dispatcher and is crying and saying that she doesn't have the address to the house. She hands me the phone and I say, "Hello?" The dispatcher lady, who sounds annoyed, tells me that she needs an address to send police to. I ask that she trace the call and she says something like, "You're house sitting and you don't even know where you're at?" Scared, angry, and overwhelmed, I hand the phone back to Amanda and start looking for something with an address in the kitchen. I'm looking for in the junk drawer, on the counter, on the refrigerator, fully keeping an eye down the hall that has the daycare rooms, knowing that on the other side of one of those doors is a patio door that was opened. Amanda tells the lady that she doesn't pick up the mail because of their lockbox, and then a few seconds later removes the phone from her ear and stares at me with a blank face. I ask her if they're tracing the call because I can't find anything with an address. Amanda tells me, she said, "I hope the police finds you in time," and then hung up the phone. I was now really scared and angry at the same time. We knew that there were people outside. We knew that the patio door to the daycare area was opened. But we did not know what to do. We stood in the kitchen silent for what seemed like forever, but was probably 1 minute. I picked up the phone and dialed 411. I told Amanda that they would have the number to the police department, and as calmly as I could, I explained what was happening to us to 411. I included the 911 dispatcher and said that we really needed the phone number of the town's police department. When we heard a huge metal bang outside the kitchen window by the patio door, it sounded like someone dropped something metal and heavy. Amanda started crying, and I couldn't hold in my fear anymore and started crying too. The 411 operator said that they were connecting us and would stay on the line with us after getting pissed at the 911 dispatcher on our behalf. A police officer answered the phone, and the 411 operator started explaining what was happening to the police. They were asked to disconnect once we had an established connection. The police asked a few questions, and we heard the whistle again outside, and floodlights all around the house turned on again. I was too scared to look outside, and we had never turned on the patio light because we had to walk past the patio window to get to the switch. We told the policeman on the phone about the whistle, and he said that there should be several policemen showing up shortly and to stay on the phone. We were just outside the town limits and knew that it might take a few minutes. Having an officer on the phone made me feel a little better, but I was still really scared. He told us that the police arrived and were coming up the drive. The policeman said to put down the phone and open the door, so I did, and what I saw was a police pickup truck with spotlights flashing into the pastures that ran along both sides of the drive. 2 officers, not with handguns, but with shotguns, slowly walking beside the truck as it came up the long drive. 4 officers approached the house asking us our names. One went to the phone and said they were here and hung up the phone. They ordered us to stay in the dining room and began searching the house and property. One by one they returned. The last one came back in through the patio door by the kitchen. He said he searched the barn, and the horse scared him, and the horse also looked spooked. He asked what other animals were in the barn, and they told us they didn't find anyone and that the daycare patio was not locked. There was, however, a broom and handle in the track to prevent it from being opened too far. I looked at the patio door that the officer entered in and saw there was not a broom handle in that one, then felt dumb because he just walked through it. They lectured Amanda about not knowing the address of the house that she was supposed to be responsible for, and other stuff that I don't remember. After finishing statements, they said they'd stick around and look more, and if we wanted to leave, we could. They could lock the bottom lock, but not activate the alarm, and we were cool with that. We were out there so fast, and we got into my car and went to her mom's. So mentally exhausted, we fell asleep and I went to my office job the next morning. She said she really didn't want to go back to the house, but she had to feed the animals their breakfast. Her mom told her to take her sister and she did. That afternoon, she called me at work. She was really nervous and began telling me that when they went into the house, there was footprints in poop on the carpet. I said it was probably the cop that checked the barn. She said that she didn't know or pay attention. Also, she said that when they went into the barn to feed and water the animals in the morning, someone had tied all the rabbits' legs together in their hutches. They had 10 rabbits the kids used for 4-H. Amanda then continues to say there was a note with the word "lucky" scribbled on the back of a pizza coupon she thought came from the refrigerator door because the flyer was missing a coupon. It took a while for them to untie the rabbits, and Amanda asked her mom to find someone else from their church to finish the house sitting. she wasn't going back. She also told the officer what she came back to, but no one was ever caught, and the police never called either of us to update us.
This happened way back in October of 2006. At that time, I was just a 19-year-old kid, always on the lookout for adventure. One Friday night, after wrapping up my shift at McDonald's, I met up with some friends who suggested we check out this haunted location called White's Bridge. My one buddy, Brandon, said he had recently learned about it and began telling us the legends associated with the 100-year-old wood-covered bridge. Never one to turn down a spooky experience, we all piled into my green Ford Taurus and headed off on our journey. Brandon gave directions, guiding me off the main road, and within minutes, we were on the dirt back roads, surrounded by woods and cornfields. Our only point of reference was a blinking cell tower off in the distance. We could tell we were getting further from the city as our cell phones began slowly losing service. As we rode deeper and deeper into what legitimately felt like the absolute middle of nowhere, Brandon repeated the legend associated with the bridge. Back in the early 1900s, a local farmer discovered that his beloved wife had been cheating on him. And in a fit of rage, he killed her and her lover after discovering them in the act. After committing the cold-blooded murder, the farmer left his home and wandered the dirt roads in a daze. He eventually came upon White's Bridge, where the realization of what he had done finally began to sink in. And deciding he would rather die than face the consequences, he hoisted a rope up and over one of the bridge's rafters, and he hung himself. As far as I can tell now, the story is complete fiction. But at the time, we totally believed it. After a long and bumpy ride, Brandon instructed me to turn right on an off-road. I wouldn't have even noticed it was there had he not pointed it out. I took the turn, and there before us was White's Bridge. It looked like something straight out of a horror film. An old wood-covered bridge, aged by time, sitting alone above a river deep in the middle of nowhere. We parked the car on the side of the road and we got out to explore. Immediately catching our eyes was a scarecrow lying abandoned at the entrance to the bridge. My friend Mike, who was known as somewhat of a risk taker, and a stupid one at that, picked up the scarecrow and lit it on fire. The hay body burst up into a ball of flames, and Mike waved it around proudly next to the old dry wood bridge. Realizing the risk, I told him to throw the damn thing in the river and put it out, which thankfully he did. After making sure there weren't any rogue embers that could ignite the bridge, Brandon suggested we get back in the car and pull it onto the bridge. He explained that the legend was that if you parked your car in the middle of the bridge, put it in neutral, and killed the engine, the spirit of the dead farmer would push the vehicle forward to get it off the bridge. Naturally, we had to try this. We piled back in and did exactly as he said. We parked halfway across the rickety old bridge and killed the engine. We sat in the pitch black, saying nothing, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The only sounds were the creaking of the bridge, the river flowing beneath us, and footsteps. Suddenly, the back driver's side door opens and a woman abruptly enters the back seat, cramming in next to my other two friends back there. She looked to be in her late 20s or early 30s. Long, straight black hair, slim, and wearing a plaid shirt and blue jeans. It's been a while, but this is essentially how I remember the conversation going. "I saw your fire signal for me," she said. Wait, what?" I replied, totally freaked out and at a complete loss for words. "I'm so glad you came. My boyfriend's car broke down that way. I need a ride back." My brain was doing its best to compute the situation. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" I asked. "What are you doing out here?" "I told you," she responded curtly. "My boyfriend's car broke down over there. Can you please just give me a ride so I don't have to walk all the way back?" She was pointing ahead, towards a narrow road that forked off to the right on the other side of the bridge. My friend Mike, the scarecrow burner, and ever the gentleman, added, "I mean, if you need a place to stay, you're more than welcome to come and crash at my place. I got plenty to drink and..." I interrupted him. "No, lady, listen. I'm sorry. I don't know who you are. You just got in my car and this is all really weird. You could be an axe murderer for all I know. And I'm sorry, you have to get out." She glared at me in the rearview mirror. If looks could kill, I would have been done for. "But you signaled for me," she responded in an irritated tone. "We weren't signaling for you. Get out." She let out an angry sigh and she got out, walking back in the direction from which she came and disappearing into the night. I started the engine right up and looked at my friends. They all had looks of disbelief on their faces. Without saying a word, I put the car in drive and slowly rolled forward off the bridge. We needed to turn around and go back across the bridge to get back to where we'd come from. And the only way to do that was to pull onto the side road. The side road that the woman said her boyfriend's car had broken down on, and then reverse. As I pulled onto the side road, my headlights illuminated the 3 posted signs that I hadn't been able to see from the bridge. "No trespassing," "Private property," and "Do not enter." Looking up the road, there was no sign of the woman. Wherever she went, it didn't appear she went that way. I didn't want to stick around though, so I backed up and crossed the bridge again. And from there, began the journey home. We didn't have much to say on the ride home, and I think we were all equally stunned. Except for Mike, who asked if he knew anyone that would be awake at this hour. Someone he could score some weed from. I visited White's Bridge a couple other times after that, but nothing of note happened in my subsequent visits. Sadly, some delinquents burned down the old White's Bridge some years ago. It was rebuilt, but from what I hear, it's just not the same as the original. I don't have any plans to go back and check it out. So, to the strange lady who entered my car, out in the middle of nowhere, at 2 a.m. Let's not meet.
This was pretty horrifying when it happened, especially for everyone involved, but enough time has gone by now that I can laugh about it. So, here it goes. I was in my second year of university, and my flat was near a quiet road surrounded by woodland, so we'd occasionally see roe deer and other wildlife roaming around. We weren't that far from campus, but it was still pretty out of the way. One night, it must have been around 10 p.m., my housemate got home, came straight upstairs to my room, and told me that a deer had been hit by a car and killed. It was lying practically in the middle of the road. There weren't many streetlights, so it posed a serious risk to any drivers who might not see it in the dark. It could flip up and go through someone's windscreen or cause them to swerve into a tree. We considered calling campus security to come and remove the deer, but we knew it would take them a while to get there. So we figured we might as well try and move it off the road and onto the pavement. I grabbed some heavy-duty plastic garbage bags, and my housemate brought a torch. When we got to the place where the deer was, I gingerly put my hand on her neck to check that she was definitely dead. I almost screamed when she suddenly came to life, flailing her legs out and thrashing and making the most god-awful groaning noise. It was like a horror movie jump scare. We were both very shaken, though thankfully out of the kicking range. After the last outburst, the deer unfortunately did pass away. Though I think that we were both secretly relieved that we didn't have to put her out of her misery ourselves. Killing a half-dead animal with a rock was very much not my 2018 bucket list. No cars had come by yet, so between us, we were able to wrap the deer in garbage bags and lift it. Once we had it up, it seemed stupid to just dump it there on the pavement when the woods were right next to us. We decided to carry it a bit further out and leave it at a sheltered woodland area. I know how dumb it sounds now, but at the same time, it seemed perfectly sensible. You can probably guess what happened next. We'd been walking for a couple minutes, and the bag was leaking blood from the deer's hind leg, and it was generally just a pretty messy business. We were talking as we went, and I said something about how I hoped she hadn't suffered too much, and how we needed to find out an out-of-the-way place to drop the corpse, and etc. What we didn't know is that not that far away, just out of our line of sight, was a guy out for a late-night smoke. I smelled the weed, but had no idea anyone else was around until we were on our way out of the woods again. At which point we saw him walking ahead of us very fast, occasionally darting horrified glances over his shoulder. He was white as a sheet, and as we drew nearer, he broke into an outright run. And when we finally emerged onto the street, we saw him disappear around the corner. I can only imagine how freaked out he must have been. From his perspective, he'd seen two people wandering through the woods after dark, dragging a heavy, bloody garbage bag and discussing the most efficient way to dispose of a woman's body. We spent the next few days half expecting to receive some sort of call from security accusing us of murder, but nothing ever came of it. Maybe he went back to check for the body and realize what had happened, or he was just too traumatized to report it. Either way, I'm pretty sure we gave that man the shock of his life. So, to the innocent weed-smoking guy in the woods, I am so sorry, and I promise I'm not a murderer. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I would also like to thank my awesome patrons: Fire05, Gabro, Moschino, Ralph, Lori, Jake, and Eskimono. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel further, you can be a patron too. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.